Hi, this is Shauna, and I want to welcome you to Living in This Space. Real talk, because hey, we're all just living in this space we call life, right? It's messy, it's hard, and sometimes it's the most joyous thing we can experience. I want you, my listener, to have a place where the conversation is real and honest. I hope we can spend this time together, validating, sharing, and experiencing all the feels together with whatever topic is on the agenda for the day. Let's dive in. Hey friends, and welcome back. Well, we are wrapping up the month of May, which is also Mental Health Awareness Month. And I've dug into a couple of topics this month that fall into this arena, and I wanted to explore one more area that I feel like is a struggle for a lot of people, and that's procrastination. I mean, this is so real, and it's almost debilitating for some people because the procrastination is such an issue, and then some of us just procrastinate every now and then. But I really thought we would dig into it because I learned in doing a little bit of research on it that procrastination can also be linked to depression. And so I just felt like it might fit in well with Mental Health Awareness Month. So procrastination is something that I really struggle with and always have. And earlier today, my husband said, "Hey, what's your topic on for this week?" And when I told him procrastination, he chuckled. Well, honestly, he did a little bit more than chuckle, but he knows that it's, I'm kind of the queen of procrastination, and we joke about it a lot. We're complete polar opposites in this area. And so I guess he found it amusing that I would be talking about it. And quite honestly, when I thought about doing this, I kind of felt the same way. I'm like, why am I going to talk about this? Because I do not have a handle on this right now. But when I was doing my research, I found so many great tips and suggestions. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And, while this may be amusing for some of us with our families or our friends or coworkers, and we often will lightheartedly joke about it, for those of us who this is a real issue and we deal with it more than just occasionally, I think it can feel like an emotional handicap. So if that's where you're sitting, sit with me today when we talk about this, and let's see if there's anything that I've learned that may be able to help you as well. So procrastination is defined as the act of unnecessarily postponing a decision or an action. Now, unnecessarily, I think that's a key word there. So let's be honest, this can be a real problem for some of us. And I've struggled with this, as I alluded to earlier, most of my adult life. One of the things that I learned when doing the research on this topic is that procrastination, while it being linked to depression, can also be linked to anxiety and ADHD and a number of other things that, I just honestly never would have thought to put the two together, but it makes complete sense now. Psychology Today has a great online article by Dr. Alice Boyes that digs into why procrastination and depression are linked. Here are just a few examples, paraphrased in my own words, of what it might look like when depression or anxiety is driving procrastination. When people are depressed, they tend to lose interest in things that they would normally enjoy. So in turn, they can find themselves hesitating to commit because when it comes to actually engaging, they can't trust that they're going to follow through because of their history of procrastination. And then some of us may be dealing with stress by putting things into our "it's too hard" basket rather than tackling them head on. Does this one ring true for you? I love that phrase, "it's too hard" basket, because it's such a visual for me that when something is overwhelming or something feels hard or scary for me, I think I put it in that "it's too hard" basket. And I never really thought about it that way until I read it. And then here's another one. Planning out multi-step tasks can feel overwhelming. That is so true, isn't it? If I'm going to do something that has multiple steps to it, it feels big and huge. And this can lead to us putting it off or just avoiding it altogether. I know with my own experience in journeying through depression and now, kind of identifying that I've dealt with ADHD most of my life, procrastination has always been my go-to. It's been my go-to way of dealing with things that felt overwhelming. It's been my go-to way of dealing with things that I was afraid to do or that I just felt like were too big to do. Maybe I might see these things as things I don't want to do for one reason or another. Or they may be things that feel hard. Or sometimes, it's a conversation that you need to have with someone. There's just so many things that we tend to put on the back burner and tell ourselves we'll get that done eventually. In a moment of procrastination for me, I'll usually retreat. I'll check out and I'll find some excuse to put off what I'm doing. And then my go-to when I'm in this moment is typically to binge watch TV or mindlessly scroll social media. Do you find yourself there? It's such an easy trap to fall into, isn't it? I mean, I am so good at putting something off for as long as I can. Have you ever felt this emotional overwhelm when facing something that feels like more than maybe it feels like a chasm. I'm trying to find the right word here. Something that feels like a chasm that's really just a simple task. But when you're in that state of overwhelm, that's what it feels like. It feels huge. I know this feeling well, and I think some of you probably do too. If you've been there, you're not alone. You're not alone. I think if we could have like a call-in or an everybody raise their hand of people who have felt this way before, I think you'd see a lot more people out there are walking a road that feels very familiar. When I was doing research on this topic, I came across a site that has some really great information on it. And he titles it, How to Stop Procrastinating. Now, I don't know if any of these things I'm going to read will be a fix-all for you or me personally, but the recommendations of the author, Dr. Schatz, make so much sense. It was kind of like a light bulb moment for me. So I'm really looking forward to implementing some of these things into my own life, and I wanted to come on here and share them with you today. Now, I'm going to be kind of combining his suggestions with my own personal thoughts. So I'll link his website to my podcast description, and that way you can go. It's really lengthy, but you can go and read all of the information that he has on this. But we're going to begin with his 4 essential tips to help you stay on track and avoid procrastination. Number 1 is to set specific and realistic goals. So let's maybe take the example of exercising. If you wanted to start exercising and you hadn't really been exercising, your best bet would be to start with small goals, like maybe taking a walk or doing some floor exercises at home, and then working your way up to maybe going to the gym or taking some classes. This is more realistic than if you went out and bought a gym membership, because then the first day walking into that gym, you're probably going to feel overwhelmed. There's lots of gym equipment. There's lots to do. Where do I start? And then we end up probably sitting on that gym membership and not using it at all. So set specific and realistic goals. Number 2, assess your procrastination. This is important. Try to identify what you're consistently putting off and why. Is it due to perfectionism? Maybe it's something that consistently feels overwhelming, but also something you really can't avoid. Think about the situations where you find yourself procrastinating and try to determine what it is that's causing the stall in your following through. The 3rd one is create an action plan. Some of you love action plans, right? I mean, it's like task-oriented, it's driven, you've got steps. So I think creating an action plan is a great idea. Once you can identify what's holding you back, it's going to make it a whole lot easier to tackle the issue. If you can name the problem, you can begin to work on a solution. Now, this may involve you seeking some kind of help if it involves depression, fear, anxiety, or ADHD. But if you can identify what it is and create an action plan, you can begin to take those steps toward, maybe addressing why you've been procrastinating your whole life, basically. Number 4 is implement your plan. Journal and figure out which action steps you need to take to get the task done in a more timely or efficient manner. This will help you feel successful in the end. So, these are 4 really good steps that will hopefully help us to first dig into why we may be going down this rabbit hole of putting things off. And secondly, they will help us to take those first steps forward toward changing. So I want to next look at some of the techniques that Dr. Schatz has listed on his website that may actually help us manage the chaos that we find swirling around in our brains when we're faced with something that we would normally put on the back burner. Now, remember, this isn't a full version. Earlier I said there's a lot of information on his website. So I'll pop that link in the description of the podcast so you can go and read more in depth his advice on how to stop procrastinating. But let's dig into some of the tasks that he talks about. You're going to, first of all, break your to-do list into manageable steps. So those things that you typically put off and you typically procrastinate, try to break them into more manageable steps. Next, give yourself permission to make mistakes by accepting that your work will not always be perfect. If you struggle with perfectionism, this is going to be super important for you. Next, make tasks more enjoyable by listening to music while you do them. I love this. I personally love this one. When I listen to music while I'm cleaning, I'm far more productive. Just takes my mind totally off what I have to do and puts it on whatever I'm listening to. And vacuuming, dusting, sweeping, mopping, whatever it is I'm doing, just goes so much more smoothly. Then you want to make it harder to procrastinate by removing potential distractions. So for me, if I need to get something done, I better not sit down on the couch to watch TV, especially if it has episodes. So can I get a hand raise on this one? If it's got episodes, I can promise you I'm not going to just watch one. And I'll tell myself a lie. It's a big lie. One more, just one more, and then I'll get up. But what do we do at the end of that one more? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I've got to watch just one more. I've got to find out what happened. So for me, that's a huge rabbit hole I'll go down. Next, set deadlines. Make a decision that you're going to complete whatever task you're working on by a specific time. Give yourself a deadline, a time frame, whatever you want to call it, but set some parameters around it. And then increase your motivation by checking off the tasks and the days on which you achieve your goals. Just a checklist, that's all it is. But it is so satisfying to check off what you've done. And then maybe set a reward system for yourself. I wouldn't advise using food or drink as a reward because that's a whole nother situation you can get into. But give yourself some type of reward. Next, improve your environment by adding reminders to your goals. So, what works for some would be a to-do list. Or maybe it's an audible reminder or an alarm on your phone or your watch. Or maybe it's working off a tight calendar. But improving your environment by adding these reminders will sometimes be just enough to keep you on task. Use time management techniques. So by this, I think what he's trying to help us to understand to do is alternate consistently between work and rest. Like, what is it? All work makes Johnny a dull boy or something like that. There was some kind of saying out there like that. You don't want to just have your day all work. You've got to schedule in some rest time. I like to make time that I call just me time. This is just free time that I can do whatever I choose with no agenda at all. And you know what, y'all? If I know I've got that built into my day, I know it's coming, then I can be a little bit more productive in what I have to get done. So this is something that I personally know works. Creating starting rituals. Okay, this was new to me. I heard Mel Robbins talk about this a while back, and this is also in his list of things to do. Starting rituals. This is by counting down from 5 to 1 before you take an action. This is brilliant, y'all, and it works for so many people. I love Mel Robbins, by the way, and she calls this the 5-second rule. She says, you start by counting backwards to yourself from 5 to 1, and then you move. If you don't move within 5 seconds, your brain will kill the idea and you'll talk yourself out of doing it. Wow, is that brilliant? And hey, it works. It works. If you know you've got to get up and do something, but you've been putting it off and putting it off, make a decision. Start counting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then stand up and get moving. If you do this consistently, it will become a habit for you. Then start with your best or worst task. For example, your easiest or hardest one. Whichever motivates you to get it done, start with that one. And lastly, remember, we talked earlier about depression, anxiety, ADHD. If you've got anything like this going on and you've identified it, that it's part of what's driving you to be procrastinating on the daily, get some help there. Get some help with treating those conditions. I want you to remember that by taking the necessary steps to create better habits, you can begin to work on overcoming these tendencies. I can tell you from experience that once you identify what's holding you back, moving forward with small steps in the right direction is going to give you such a sense of accomplishment. You never know. You may even feel empowered enough to move on to some of those more overwhelming projects or activities that you've been avoiding. Y'all, I really hope this has given you some good takeaways. There is so much valuable information out there to be found on this topic, but I want you to keep in mind, everything you pull up, whoever wrote it has an opinion. So even with what I tell you, do your research. Find tips that resonate with you. If you hear it and it sounds like, oh, that feels good, I think I could do that, then try it and see if it works for you. And take each day, one day at a time. Until the next time, my sweet friends, I hope that you can wake up and set your days with intention. And at the end of your day, I hope you have a measure of peace with yourself, that you did the very best you could do that day. I hope you have such an amazing day today. Hey, thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit follow wherever you get your podcast. And until next time, I hope you live in your space well, my friends.